Hello and welcome to this day in history for December 28th. December 28 is the 362nd day of the year in the Gregorian calendar, with 3 days remaining to the end of the year. Sanskrit is an ancient Indian language that has given many words to English directly, such as orange, nirvana, and mantra, and also indirectly, such as guru, khat, and jute, by way of its daughter languages, or by way of another language which borrowed them from Sanskrit, such as Zen, candy, or lilac. For the next few days, we'll explore words that have their origins in Sanskrit. Today's word is avatar. The word avatar is a noun, meaning an embodiment of a concept, a new personification of a familiar idea, an embodiment, an incarnation, a representation of a person or thing in computers, networks, etc. The Buddha is considered an avatar of the god Vishnu, Vishnu the Preserver. I have a 22-quart canning pressure cooker that I named Vishnu the Preserver. The etymology of the word avatar is directly from Sanskrit, avatar, which means descent, as of a god from heaven to earth, from ava, away, plus tarati, he crosses. Ultimately, from the Indo-European root terra, to cross over or pass through or overcome, which also gives us thorough, through, transient, nostril, and thrill. Earliest documented use of the word avatar is 1784. And I want to remind you that links to my research are included in the show notes. And with that, let's start in the year, oh my goodness, way back in 169 BC, when the menorah was lit to rededicate the Holy Temple of Jerusalem after 2 centuries of foreign rule and religious oppression and a 7-year revolt. The menorah burned for 8 days without sufficient fuel needed to do so, birthing the holiday of Hanukkah. 1793, American writer Thomas Payne was arrested in France for treason. Although the charges against him were never detailed, he'd been tried in absentia on December 26th and convicted. Before moving to France, Payne was an instrumental figure in the American Revolution as the author of Common Sense, writings used by George Washington to inspire American troops. Payne moved to Paris to become involved with the French Revolution, but the chaotic political climate turned against him, and he was arrested and jailed for crimes against the country. America worked hard to get him out of jail and back to America, where he proved himself a pain in the butt here also, eventually falling out of favor over here as well. In 1832, John C. Calhoun resigned his vice presidency, citing political differences with President Andrew Jackson and a desire to fill a vacant Senate seat in South Carolina. John C. Calhoun became the first vice president in U.S. history to resign the office. In 1856, Woodrow Wilson was born in Staunton, Virginia. On this day in 1869, America's first Labor Day. The Knights of Labor, a labor union of tailors in Philadelphia, held the first Labor Day ceremonies in American history. On December 28th of 1895, the first commercial movie was screened. This took place at the Grand Café in Paris. The film was made by Louis and Auguste Lumière, 2 French brothers who developed a camera projector called the cinematograph. The Lumière brothers unveiled their invention to the public in March of 1895 with a brief film showing workers leaving the Lumière factory. On December 28th, the entrepreneurial siblings screened a series of short scenes from everyday French life and charged admission for the first time. And this reminds me of a pair of brothers that live right here in my neighborhood who call themselves the Cinema Twins. I'll post a link to their channel in the show notes. You should check them out. They're quite something, these guys. In 1895, William Röntgen published a paper detailing his discovery of a new type of radiation, which would later come to be known as X-rays. On December 28th of 1908, the worst European earthquake ever recorded struck the Straits of Messina in southern Italy, leveling the cities of Messina in Sicily and Reggio di Calabria on the Italian mainland. 1912, the first municipally owned streetcars took to the streets of San Francisco. 1922, American comic book writer, editor, publisher, and producer Stan Lee was born. You might remember that we mentioned him on this day in history when he died on November 12th. He did live to the age of 95. 1938, a woman named Florence Lawrence, often referred to as the first movie star, appeared in almost 300 films, most of them silent films. Lawrence was also an inventor. She designed the first auto signaling arm, a mechanical turn signal, along with the first mechanical brake signal. She did not patent those inventions, however, and as a result she received no credit or profit from either one. Interestingly, her mother was also an inventor, having patented the first electrical windshield wipers in 1917, and she also never got much credit either. Back to today's item, though. Florence had suffered a series of traumas. She'd been injured during a filming and suffered burns in a fire and a broken vertebra in her back. She'd had trouble with marriages. She lost her mother. She had several business failures, was suffering chronic pain from what was most likely a bone marrow cancer, and was also having trouble finding work that suited her. On December 28th of 1938, she called in sick and then drank a poisonous cocktail including ant poison and cough syrup. She was 53. This is the birthday of American actor, producer, screenwriter, and talk show host Seth Meyers, who turns 46 today as I read this in 2019. In 1973, on this day, the United States Endangered Species Act was signed into law by President Richard Nixon. On this day in 1973, Alexander Solzhenitsyn's literary investigation of the police state system in the Soviet Union, the Gulag Archipelago, was published in Russian in Paris on this date in 1973. The brutal and uncompromising description of political repression and terror was quickly translated into many languages and was published in the United States just a few months later. The book was an instant success in the West, but Soviet officials were livid, as you can well imagine. TASS, the official Soviet news agency, declared that the work was an unfounded slander against the Russian people. On February 12th of 1974, Solzhenitsyn was arrested, stripped of his citizenship, and deported. He eventually settled in the United States. In the 1980s, he declined Mikhail Gorbachev's offer to reinstate his Soviet citizenship, but he did return to Russia to live in 1994, and he died of heart failure in Moscow on August 3 of 2008 at the age of 89. In 1981, the first American test tube baby was born. Child born as a result of in-vitro fertilization. She was born in Norfolk, Virginia. Considered a miracle at the time, such births are now fairly common. And I think that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for watching. As always, links to my research are included in the show notes. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and feel free to share this video. While you're here, check out my other channel, 8 Susquehanna. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Barking dog. Alrighty. Back to work. Okie dokie, Smokey. Let's just rearrange that a little bit. That's not the way I like to tell it anyway. Smoother. Be smoother. We don't need all those words. I'm going to have to look at that. Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? She's not a man. See, this is what happens when we're not scripted. This is why I don't do live shows.